Welcome back, everybody. John Aravosis here. It is Wednesday, February 8th, which today's Aravosis report, talking to you about the latest news from Ukraine. Let me get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. And as always, we wait a minute or two just to get a critical mass of folks arriving. So give me a minute here and we will start. But maybe start, as always, by just introducing yourselves, where you are coming from, while we wait for the TikTokers to arrive as well. Hey, guys. Hey, Rob. Hey, TikTokers, welcome. We have a busy news day with Zelenskyy traveling to Europe. Well, in Europe, of course, anyway, but traveling to London and Paris, which is nice. So anyway, hello, everybody. As I said, we'll wait a quick second here and then get rolling for folks to, oops, my temperature's changing on my, there we go. That's all right. Anyway, yeah, we're pretty good. Maybe take another minute, guys. But like I said, we've got a lot of news today. President Zelenskyy already was in London, then flew to Paris. He's also going to Brussels as well. I don't know if that means he's staying till tomorrow or not. Thank you for the heart there, L, on TikTok. Sasha, my dog, is doing well. We'll just wait another minute for the TikTokers to catch up with us, folks, and then we will be ready. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, cute military man is here. Be very careful with the jokes on TikTok. Our moderators, understandably, don't always know when you're joking. Thank you, Sig Sauer, for the hat. All right, guys, I will get rolling here. I am John Aravosis. Welcome to the show. This is the Aravosis Report, my nightly show, Monday to Friday, I knocked TikTok out of the room, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. I've got TikTok on my iPad over here. I've got YouTube and the rest of you guys over here on my laptop. That's why you will see me looking back and forth, because I got all of you here. Yeah, let me thank you, Valerie, for the gift. I was just going to say, if you guys please keep the gifts coming on TikTok and on YouTube. On TikTok, I will always try to do a shout out when I see the gifts. On YouTube, the super chat questions I will give priority to as a thank you. I do this for free. I've been doing it since the war broke out last February. Thank you, Zoe, for the pause. Nobody's paying me. You guys are paying me to do this. So quite literally, you are keeping me in business, helping provide the news for Ukraine and for Ukraine, even more importantly than about Ukraine. So thank you guys for that. Let's get rolling. So President Zelenskyy today in London, surprise visit to London and Paris, and then Brussels as well. Thank you, Sniper and Andrew, for the hat there, and Ali for the llama. Edsel, thank you, Edsel. Very generous of you there, and I also one of my favorites as well. Thank you, Harold. The TikTokers are going a little nuts with the gifts right now, which is very appreciated, though. So thank you. Who's that? Sniper with the pause. So Prime Minister Sunak of Great Britain said of the UK that nothing is off the table when it comes to fighter combat aircraft. Thank you, Crusher, for the hat there. Of course, they are part of the conversation. The Brits are basically saying that they are considering, thank you, Jakob, for the hat. They are considering giving fighter jets to the Ukrainians. They are already committed to starting training very soon on how to use NATO fighter jets. The Brits apparently have very good fighter simulators that the Ukrainians can use. A BBC report, I just sort of for the press conference, they had like a press conference with the British Prime Minister and Zelenskyy, and it was very cute. There's a BBC Ukraine, British broadcasting, the public broadcasting in Britain, and their Ukraine reporter, who's a Ukrainian but working for them, and she gets up and says in Ukrainian, and it's translated, President Zelenskyy, welcome. I so wish I could give you a hug, but I know it's not appropriate. And he says, why? Come here, no. And she goes, no. Her line then next, she goes, won't they shoot me? And he says, no. So he has her come up there. It was very cute. They give a big hug, and Sunak, the prime minister, is laughing. It was very cute, really adorable. Thank you, Aggie, for that. What else? Zelenskyy also met with King Charles today. I sort of got to get used to saying that, the King of England. He will go on in Paris. Actually, I believe he should already be in Paris at this point. He went on in Paris to meet with President Macron of France, and Chancellor Scholz of Germany was going to be in Paris as well, at least from what I read. Regarding the planes, so Britain made a lot of news today saying that they were looking at giving fighter jets to Ukraine. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, apparently told his military to go and investigate what kind of planes could be available. Now, Michael Clark, who's a very good British military expert who is on Sky News a lot, he weighed in today and wrote a quick piece saying his impressions of this. He says that he does not think Britain will be giving any planes to Ukraine simply because Britain has the wrong planes. Thank you, Harold, for that. Britain has the wrong planes. He says the planes, now this is a little over my head here, but he, as a military expert, says, thank you, McFadge, says that the Brits need either the American F-16s, Swedish Gripen fighters, or the Mirage fighters from France. Thank you, L, for the Rose Bear. He says the Brits can offer a lot of pilot training. Now, one good point he did say that was at least good to hear. He said that for the Ukrainian fighters, the fighter pilots who already know how to fly MiG-29s, which are the Soviet fighter jets that the Ukrainians inherited when they left the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union dissolved. Those pilots, he said, should be able to learn in 3 to 4 weeks on simulators how to fly NATO fighter jets, American or European fighter jets. So that's good news, at least. Russia is, this was, what do you think Russia's response was to the news today that the Brits were at least considering providing fighter jets? Russia threatened consequences if the Brits provide these fighter jets. There will be consequences for Europe and the entire world. As a defense expert said on Twitter, well, I hope there will, because that's the whole reason we're giving them the planes. Again, BS from Russia. All Russia does is threaten. They've been threatening consequences for a year now, and quite literally, they've bluffed for a year. Whatever. I just don't care about what the Russians say anymore. Please do follow and subscribe on all the services. I wanted to tell you really quick, I've got a new fundraiser up, not for me, for Ukraine. Occasionally, we've been doing these fundraisers for Ukraine. 100% of the money goes to Ukraine. This time, we've raised over $80,000, by the way, overall for Ukraine, for humanitarian work, military. This one is to buy camouflage nets for the military. We've got, we're working with the nonprofit we always work with, and they've got 6 or 7 centers around Ukraine where volunteer citizens are coming in, and they're literally, I got a photo I can show you. I've got the video on TikTok where volunteer citizens are coming in and knitting camouflage nets, winter camouflage. Actually, this was very funny. There was overnight, Vlad sent me the picture. Overnight, the cat got into the camouflage materials, which I thought was just fabulous. Basically, we're raising money to buy the camouflage materials for the centers, and the women and men and kids are getting together, knitting the nets. I was going to find you the quick video and show you. I've got the figures here. We want to raise $3,000. $3,000 will get us 150 nets. The nets are 6 meters by 9 meters. That's 18 feet by 27 feet. Each net, as I said, $20 a net, 150 nets. 100% of the money will go to the net effort. And finally, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, just that we're actually getting. I'm going to get the video here really quick. That we are providing the materials so they can actually knit themselves. Currently, they seem to be making a lot of the winter ones, which are the white ones. Here, I'll show you guys. You can see this is literally one of the facilities that we're going to be giving our money to. You can see sort of a lot of women today, but it kind of makes sense. Military war going on. So there you go. Knitting the nets. But if you guys can help, I think it would be really cool. It's $20 for one net. 100% of the money is going to the Ukrainians. This is not for me. It's not for anybody else. If you go on TikTok to my profile, you can see the link in my profile that says Linktree. Click it. It's my link of links. And you will see the very top link gives my friend, my colleague Vlad's PayPal in Ukraine. That is the link that we've used for the $80,000 that we've been raising money for already. The rest of you guys, let me pull up Vlad's PayPal again. Hang on. I always forget to banner. I've got it as a banner. There we go. That's Vlad's PayPal. If you guys can help out, I'd really appreciate it. As I said, it's really cool. The Ukrainians need it. The nets are literally to cover the Ukrainian military, to cover their weapons. I mean, basically, these nets you can tell because they're white, so they're winter nets. And I'll show you guys. I always assume everybody knows this. I don't mean to. I try not to sort of talk down to folks. They knit this with the material, right? And what happens is when that lays on top of a military vehicle, for example, notice how even here from a distance, it almost looks like snowfall, right? Look at it. It almost looks like if this were laying down as if there was snow laying on top of that net. And that's what it ends up looking like. If you've got this, for example, you could have a tank, you could have a HIMARS, you could have any kind of a military vehicle, and you would stretch this over and it would blend in with the snowy surroundings so you wouldn't know what it was. Oh, thank you, Canal. See, I don't even recognize that one. That was very cool. And thank you, Jamie. So that's what they're for. They're to hide the military effort. So there we go. Oh, raise money for our border. We've already provided $5 billion for the border. Didn't you know that? Donald Trump built, I think, like 3 miles of border fence, quite literally. So you already got your money for the border. If the border's not happening, then you have to talk to the last president. He's the one that built the border wall. So, all right, guys, let's keep talking here. So anyway, so please help out if you can. Go to my profiles for that. Sorry, didn't want to have a political moment, but somebody was being a jerk there, being a typical jerk. All right, next topic, foreign policy. Foreign Policy is a very good international affairs publication, very renowned here in Washington, D.C. And they are reporting kind of scary, actually, in terms of what's coming next. Oh, thank you, thank you, Cami. That was wild. What was that? Sorry, Cami got me a really cool gift on TikTok that was some kind of, I don't even know what it was. Thank you, Harold, for the bear. That was very cool. Thank you for that. The Foreign Policy is reporting that Ukraine is bracing for a grisly Russian offensive in the Donbas. Now, they're talking about the offensive possibly coming as early as 10 days from now, folks. This is a big deal. Now, Donbas, as we know, is the region in eastern Ukraine comprised of 2 of the Ukrainian states, okay? It's Luhansk, this province or state right here, and Donetsk, which is this state or province right here. Thank you, Kanausi, for that. Combined, the 2 of them combined are referred to as Donbas. I keep meaning to Google why they call them Donbas combined. Nonetheless, this is the region. Russia controls almost 100% of Luhansk. They control maybe 50% of Donetsk. So they really want to get both of these services together, both of these areas controlled by the Russians. Now, what Foreign Policy is saying is we expect, this is all from Foreign Policy, we expect in the next 10 days a new huge invasion, says a Ukrainian military official. Hundreds of thousands of troops are already concentrated in the east by the Russians. Ukrainian officials estimate that Russian forces inside the country have surpassed the 300,000 mark inside Ukraine. Following a recent mobilization effort, something is brewing in the east, said Jonathan Vsevyov, a Secretary General of the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. More and more Russian soldiers are arriving on the front. The new recruits are significantly less well-equipped and trained than Russia's initial invading force. Quote, it's much bigger than what took place in the first wave, said a Ukrainian military official. So, we've been talking for a while now about what's going on with some kind of a spring offensive. Now, when I say offensive or counteroffensive, I mean a basically big new attack. The thinking had been all along that the Russians were going to have a big attack, maybe end of March, early April. Now there is growing concern that there's some kind of a big attack coming in 10 days, more or less 10 days would get us to February 18th. Keep in mind that the Russians invaded Ukraine on February 24th. So the idea would be whether they're going to do something, to honor the anniversary of their invasion. But concern is growing about it. Now, the 1st Battalion of Leopard 2 tanks could be sent to Ukraine within the first 3 or 4 months of this year. Oh, thank you, Bonnie, for that. I don't even hydro slime. Thank you, Bonnie. Within the first tanks could arrive within within the first 3 or 4 months of the year, meaning March or April. Thank you, Boost Fight, for that. A senior German official told Sky News, Defense Minister Pistorius said at least 1 battalion could be delivered by March or April, consisting of about 31 tanks. That's not bad. That's not bad. Now, mind you, we are talking about thousands of Russian tanks, thousands of Ukrainian tanks potentially fighting them, but nonetheless, the newer tanks will help. What else we got here? We've got a lot of news today. Oh, I wanted to tell you too, I do have a Discord set up as well. Make sure you check out my Discord, discord.aerovosis.com. You can check it out as well. The links are in my profile. Go to my profile on TikTok, the link to tree link, click it. You'll see how to donate to our effort to buy the camouflage nets for the Ukrainians. You'll see, thank you, ETM Sanders. You will see my Discord community where we're doing a lot of fundraising for Ukrainian humanitarian work as well. We've got an auction set up. 50% of the auction goes to support my work because I do this for free. Well, I do it for free. I'm doing this full time. My income comes from you guys, basically. Thank you for the hat there. Was that Bonnie and sorry, real quick, Bonnie. Who's that? Noonsy for the hat. Thank you, Noonsy, for the hat, and Kanausi. And we've got lots of auction items. You can see these cool bracelets made by the Ukrainian government, cool commemorative stamps, you name it. So go check it out, folks, if you can. It's discord.aravosis.com. Now, let's keep going on. Another interesting news story today. Thank you, Carla, for the chipmunk or whatever that was, and booze fight. Do you guys remember this Russian mercenary guy who became kind of famous last year because he did a video holding up a skull on social media, and he claimed it was the skull of one of the Ukrainian fighters at Azovstal, at the steel plant. Actually, it's the steel plant whose steel the Ukrainian government made these bracelets out of. These are the bracelets that we're auctioning off on my Discord community. Real jerk. He former neo-Nazi. I mean, like, horrible guy. He comes out and says last year, "Oh, this is the skull of a Ukrainian soldier I killed with my own hands," and I, blah blah blah. Really disgusting. I mean, if it's true, it's really even if it's not true, it's disgusting. He's dead. Shot in the head. They're not sure how or why. He was volunteering in sort of his own little mercenary group he founded. The interesting thing about this is it was a shot to the head, which makes you think. Makes me think. I spend too much time with these things, but a shot to the head often makes you think of a hit, right? Like basically a contract work. Somebody took him out on purpose, right? It wasn't just like shooting in the field kind of thing. Well, interestingly, some of the Russians think that this guy may have been taken out by interesting. Okay, sorry. We're getting an explanation from Bogira on why Donbas, Donetsky. Oh boy. Okay, that's going to be a bit. Was in Donetsk coal pool. Okay, sorry, that's a little over my head, but that's interesting. Thank you. They think possibly some of the Russian conspiracy theorists think that Prigozhin might have had the guy killed. Now, Prigozhin is the Russian billionaire who runs his own mercenary group, the Wagner Group. And remember, there's been lots of weird competition with him and the Ministry of Defense and everything else. Well, exactly. Mike Webb is saying execution. It looks like this guy might have been executed, that it wasn't just he was killed during wartime. And as I said, there's this controversy brewing about some people thinking that Prigozhin had him killed. I mean, frankly, all the better that this is what they think. Hey, thank you, Kanausi, for the gift there, because anything that keeps the Russians suspect of each other only helps the war effort for the Ukrainians, right? So who knows what happened to this guy, but it's great that they think it was the fellow Russians rather than the Ukrainians. Dara Masakat, who's a senior researcher at the RAND, the RAND Corporation, she's quoted a lot talking about Ukraine over the last several months. So very credible source. She wrote an essay in Foreign Affairs as well, which we talked about Foreign Affairs earlier today, about the reasons Russia's invasion of Ukraine failed. And basically, looking at Russia having, in principle, actually, the reason I put this on the agenda for tonight is one of you had asked, I think last night, one of the questions was, what happened? Russia supposedly had all this great military equipment. What happened? She did her own analysis. I will give you just a quick summary of what she said. Thank you, Natlin, for that. She said, multitude of reasons for the failure, not the least of which was the secrecy that shrouded the invasion plans. Basically, Putin didn't want anybody to know. He kept it a secret among only the very top of the military officials. So the commanders in the field didn't know. The troops didn't know up until literally like the last second that they were going to war. A lot of the troops thought they were on maneuvers, like near Ukraine or something else. And then they found out, some of these guys, there's even phone calls of them calling their parents and going, no, we're fine. I'm not going to, we're just going on maneuvers. And then literally they're thrown into a full-fledged war. They were pissed. So you've got the morale problems. You've got the commanders that weren't able to actually prepare their own forces for the invasion. She says, this was interesting. While Russia's military doctrine states wars like this should begin with weeks of air and missile attacks against the target's military and critical infrastructure. Makes sense. If you think of the two Gulf wars the U.S. launched against Iraq, one of them valid, one not. First one was valid, but basically you go in first and you use your aircraft. It's safer in principle, safer than obviously doing troops on the ground. But you go in, and the idea is to take out as much as you can of their infrastructure, their military infrastructure, the command and control, so the military headquarters, anything you can to take out their military capability before you then move in with the ground troops. Russia didn't do that, right? Remember, with the very first day, they had ground troops coming in. Thank you, Ben Andrew, for that. Ground troops coming in that supposedly were going to try to take Kyiv, the capital, in 3 days, right? Thank you, Addie, for the bear there. So she says just that. She says ground forces were deployed on day one and came up against numerous difficulties. 3, she explained that the lack of initial airstrikes. Listen, now this is interesting because she gets to something we've all talked about, and something that actually I think a lot of us had said was, is it possible that the reason the Russians, for example, didn't level Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, right? They didn't blow up the defense ministry. They didn't go after the president's palace. 1, because the Ukrainians had very good air defenses. But 2, is it possible they didn't do it because they thought they were going to install their puppet, meaning their own fake leader that would be loyal to Russia. And they wanted to keep a sort of patina of credibility, like, oh, look, nothing's changed. Yeah, beautiful Kyiv, whereas in fact, you're now a Russian stoogedom. Well, she says the lack of initial airstrikes was likely due to Russia's belief it would need to quickly administer Ukraine. So it would need to be running Ukraine as its own as part of Russia very shortly, and wanted to keep its leadership facilities intact. So in other words, the government ministries had to be running. You didn't want them blown up, because how do you run a country if you don't have the ministries? And Russia thought it was going to be running Ukraine any day now, right? They wanted its power grid online and the Ukrainian population apathetic. Well, they'd be apathetic if they weren't blown up, right? Once you start blowing up people's houses, they get pissed off, right? So thank you, Bonnie. That's a very generous one. I know that for the feathers there. And the final thing she mentioned was flawed weaponry, including missiles with high failure rates. Remember that? Remember at the beginning of the war, they were saying things such as the Russian missiles were failing like, oh my God, it was like 60% of the missiles. It was a crazy percentage of the Russian missiles. Oh, thank you, Cindy, for that. And Cindy, and what was it? Sippelman for the rose. Thank you, guys. The missile failure rate, their training wasn't up to date, and a ton of corruption that basically stole the money that should have gone to the military. A few more stories, and then we're ready to go to questions. I do have a Patreon set up as well, so please do consider helping me out via Patreon. The Patreon is patreon.com/Aravosis. You can find it as well in my profile on TikTok. Click the link. Oh, it's there. You guys, aravosis.com. You can find it. But Patreon is a really neat way to basically help creators. You can set up an account and give them however much you want on a monthly basis. $5 a month, $10 a month, $2 a month, whatever you want. But it's a nice way to provide sort of a steady income to creators, and you don't really have to think about it because it just happens every month until you cancel. So I appreciate if you guys would consider doing that if you've been watching for a while. Thank you, Boost Fight. This is free, of course, but if you can help out, I would appreciate it, because you literally pay my you pay my bills. I do this for free full time. So thank you, guys. All right. 2 more quick stories. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this story, even though a lot of us think this is BS. An American investigative journalist who a lot of people feel like has gone a little too sort of over the hill here. Seymour Hersh is alleging that, mind you, that he talked to an official. He claims he talked to one guy who was involved in all of this, who confirmed that that the U.S., he says, with the help of NATO allies, blew up the Nord Stream pipelines, he claims. These are the pipelines in Europe going from Russia over to Germany. Nord Stream 1 that's already been around for decades. Nord Stream 2, which was the new one, bringing natural gas in. Somebody blew 2 holes in them back in September. Remember, at the time, the Russians didn't really care. I mean, the Russians were like, yeah, it's fine. We don't care. You know, we're not going to fix it anytime soon. So it made a lot of us wonder if it wasn't the Russians themselves. Well, Hirsch, again, says he talked to one guy who says in September, and the best part is, I mean, it's just too, I don't believe it. I mean, it's too fanciful. What folks have been saying is you got to look at the story, and he's claiming, the American, the State Department collaborated with the Pentagon, like all of these different federal agencies got together. And of course, nobody spilled the beans until now. Sure. We got the Norwegians involved because we wanted their help. So we involved an entire other government, and I think maybe a third government as well, but the Norwegians got involved supposedly, and together we blew up this pipeline. Well, the thing is, look at how, actually, the argument I could give you for why not, I could give you a quick answer. The quick answer somebody had already said on Twitter earlier today, which was Biden is running a White House that for 5 days was afraid to blow up a Chinese spy balloon over American territory lest anybody get hurt, right? Do you really think this guy would have done an act of war against Russia back in September where he let lots of people, including a foreign country, know about it and risk war with Russia? This guy? I mean, I like Biden, but the last thing Biden is a risk-prone kind of guy, right? Second of all, this whole debate that we've been having about weapons going to Ukraine for the last year. I mean, think about it, guys. Remember way back at the beginning, oh my God, should we give them Stinger missiles? Oh, that may piss off Russia, right? And I don't even have the trajectory of all of them, but we had the HIMARS, we had more recently the armored personnel carriers, we had the other missiles, Patriot missiles. We then had the American tanks, the British tanks. Each of these became some drama. Remember, it's all been a big public drama. The tanks, you guys remember. What I mean is 3 weeks ago, remember the bull we had to go through with the stupid tanks. It was 2 weeks of NATO drama. And oh my God, will the Russians freak out? Remember, very public and very embarrassing. Remember what happened? Thank you, Bonnie. Remember what happened last year with those MiG fighter jets that Poland wanted to give? That probably was the very first example that I can think of the public drama bull burp that we had to watch that just made us go crazy. Remember, Poland had said, well, we've got a number of MiG fighter jets we're happy to give the Ukrainians. And then it became this thing of Poland saying, well, we'd like to give them to Ukrainians via the Americans in a air base in Germany. And the Germans were like, well, we don't want it in Germany. And the Americans said, well, we don't want to do it, right? Poland can give them, but we don't want to be the ones giving it. Okay, do you really think this crowd got together and said, the crowd who wouldn't even give Ukraine airplanes, they didn't remember, do you think this crowd got together and said, let's commit an act of war and bomb a Russian pipeline and blow it up, which would literally be an act of war and would justify Russia attacking us? You get it. I mean, I don't mean to be hysterical about it, but I just don't believe it. I just have Biden isn't the kind. Donald Trump might do it. And by the way, I don't say that in a critical way. I mean, Ronald Reagan might have blown up the pipeline. Donald Trump might have blown up the pipeline. Joe Biden would not blow up the pipeline. There's no way. There's just no way in hell. Again, the guy that wouldn't blow up the balloon for 5 days, I'm glad he blew up the balloon. I'm glad he waited, that he didn't get anybody killed on the ground. I'll defend Biden on that. But this is not somebody who says, blow it up. That isn't Joe Biden. Any case, but I thought I had to bring it up because the story. What's going to happen now is all the Russia defenders, all the Putin lovers are going to be going crazy with this. Thank you, Bonnie, for the star there. Finally, last story to mention, because I know this would be a story that's out there anyway today. An international team has said that there are strong indications Vladimir Putin personally signed off on a decision to allow a Russian military system into Ukraine before it was used to shoot down Malaysian airline flight MH17. This, according to Sky News. The Buk-Telar missile system was used to shoot down MH17. Remember, that was the big civilian airliner that was shot down over Ukraine by Russian surrogates. Actually, a Russian was involved. Gherkin, one of the Russian military bloggers, was involved. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. And what the investigators are saying is they believe Putin signed off on the decision to move the fighter, the anti-aircraft weapon in place, but they don't have enough evidence to prosecute him. So they still don't have enough that they think would pass a legal standard, but they do now believe that Putin did it. So this is, by the way, one of the issues we have when we talk about war crimes and war crime prosecutions. There's a big problem of the law, because it's one thing for all of us to know, it's another thing to prove it in court. And this is a perfect example. The prosecutor is saying, we believe, we pretty much have evidence that Putin is culpable, but it still is not evidence that we think would pass muster in a court, reasonable doubt or whatever you want to call it. So, what do you do? All right, let me tell you. So I will do one more pitch on the camouflage nets, and then let's go to questions. For the questions, by the way, we're done with the news part. We'll now do question and answer and your take on all of this. Feel free on TikTok to go to my link tree in my profile, the link that's there, the URL, click it. I'm sorry. Go to my profile and there's the Q&A box, the Q&A link in my profile on TikTok. That's where you put questions and I will answer. For those of you here, obviously use the comment boxes on the bottom. Please feel free to use the super chat and super stickers. I always appreciate the financial help. Same for you guys. Please keep the gifts coming. Your financial support is helpful. I do this for free, and I've been doing it full time. So it is your guys' support that quite literally pays the bills. Oh, Hazel. Wow. I haven't seen that before. Thank you for that. Wow. Thank you so much for that. The other thing is, as I said, we do have some camouflage nets that we're raising money for the Ukrainians. There are a number of different centers in Ukraine. Oops. Oh, should John show us the map? All right. I'll show you the map. Sorry, they're getting antsy over on TikTok that I haven't needed to show the map much today. So there's the map, guys. All right. You guys crack me up. You crack me up, TikTokers. So we are raising money to build camouflage nets for the Ukrainians. They have a number of facilities for civilians chipping in. Actually, Vlad was saying, we're really kind of sad that because the economy is so bad now, a lot of people aren't working. I mean, because where's the economy, right? The country's been blown up. And a lot of people are basically staying at home. And he said, basically staying at home drinking. I mean, like it's bad. And he said one of the things this is doing, at least by getting the volunteer work for people to come together, and they're literally stitching the camouflage nets, which are the nets you throw over tanks, other military equipment, so that bombers from the sky or whatever, drones can't see them. He said this is like one of the only things that's getting people out of the house and giving them the feeling that they're doing something productive because their jobs are gone. So very sad at the same time. But anyway, we are raising money to buy, what did we say? 150 camouflage nets. We have those facilities, the citizens that are volunteering already to do the stitching of the nets together. We are buying them the materials. We want to raise $3,000 if we can. Honestly, if we raise $10,000, all the better. They're just going to build more nets. So if you guys can help, but we're going to give whatever we can. $20 buys one net. They're a 6x9 meter net, which is 18 feet by 27 feet. 100% of your donation will go towards building the nets. I'm not taking a dime. Vlad's not taking a dime. And finally, and I'll get to your questions next, you can give on TikTok via my link in my profile that says Linktree. Click it, and the very first entry you will see is the description of buy nets for Ukraine. It gives you my friend Vlad's PayPal address. We're collecting through him, and we've always collected through Vlad. $80,000 now of contributions to Ukraine we've done through Vlad, so you can trust Vlad. You guys, Aravosis.com, or I've got it on the bottom of the screen, Vlad's PayPal. If you're watching this after the show on repeat, please consider helping out. As we said, we've been doing this for real for a long time now, and it's helped a lot. So thank you. All right, let me go to the questions and answers here. Let me jump on TikTok first, because often we get the super chat questions and then I don't get to TikTok as much. Let me put glasses. Here we go. Don't worry about nuclear war. The Russians are bluffing and always bluffing. It's not in their interest. Will Ukraine have any new weapons for this big Russia rollout? I know they're talking longer range missiles, but will they get there soon? No. The longer range American missiles that just got announced like a week ago which is ground-launched small diameter bombs, GLSDB. These are the bombs that we're providing, the bombs and the missiles that can go almost 100 miles or 150 kilometers. Currently, the bombs, missiles we give them can only go maybe 60 miles max. So this is almost twice the distance, which is great. But those I believe I read had to be manufactured. So those aren't getting there anytime soon. The tanks, I said earlier in the show, did I say 31 tanks? I think we think maybe 31 of the Leopard tanks might arrive by March or April. Thank you, Chaz, for the hat there. If the Russians attack in 10 days, that isn't arriving for that. If the Russians do a big attack in March or April, maybe. There is certainly, I mean, Andy is saying a cargo plane over on YouTube. Look, there are nonstop Western weapons arriving. So it's not like there won't be, it's not like there won't be continuing weapons going to Ukraine. But every time a new system or something is announced, or just a new new weapons or a new system that they're already, what I mean, sorry, Phoenix, thank you, Phoenix, for the Galaxy there. What I mean is every time they announce a new system, even if it's an old system, but they're saying, now we're giving you another one like the Patriot, it takes time to get there. So what is coming today could be stuff that we promised 3 months ago or 4 months ago, right? So I don't know, but I would say nothing that we promised like right now is arriving too soon, but that's not entirely of the new stuff, of the big ticket stuff. No, I don't think so. So there you go. Let's look here. Jens is asking, the U.S. is selling ATACMS, which are the missiles that can go 200 miles, 300 kilometers to Poland. Do you think some of that will be passed on to Ukraine? No. The Poles wouldn't want to get into trouble by doing it. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Poland would not do it without American permission. That is the requirement when you sell weapons to foreign countries. Part of the contract is I get to decide what happens to my weapons that I sell you. You can't just give them to somebody else. So for Poland to give these ATACMS to Ukraine, the U.S. would have to sign off. Now, could the U.S. sign off secretly? Maybe. I mean, I didn't think of it, but it's quite possible that some of the weapons shipments we're doing to Poland, we announced a bunch of them in the last day or so, actually. Maybe they're not all for Poland at all, right? Maybe it isn't just Poland defending itself. Maybe it's also some stuff going to Ukraine. It's entirely possible, yeah. I see the dad jokes are continuing. Oh, hello, Elise. Thank you for that super chat question. I saw a YouTube interview. I'm hoping it's YouTube and not Young Turks. YouTube interview with a Russian POW today, prisoner of war, recruited from prison by the Russian Ministry of Defense, not by Wagner. Interesting. That is interesting. I'm trying to think so basically up until now, the Wagner group, which is the mercenary group run by the big oligarch, by mercenaries, I mean quite literally soldiers for hire. They have been fighting the war in Ukraine, but also Russian troops have been fighting as well. A lot of the fighting in Bakhmut, and I will show you my map for this, but a lot of the fighting in Bakhmut, which is the big battle we've been hearing so much about lately out here in eastern Ukraine, has been, at least we think, the Wagner group, the mercenary group, even though the Ministry of Defense says, no, it's our boys that are doing it. There's a lot of jealousy and competition going on, which is good because it hurts the morale of the Russian troops. They don't like each other. But what the Wagner group's been doing is they've been going to Russian prisons, obviously with the permission of Putin, because they're giving them pardons and telling these guys, hey, if you fight for us, we'll pardon you. Fight for us for 6 months and you won't go back to people who are in jail for like 10 years or longer. So these are, murderers and bad people. That hasn't been going too well now because the prisoners finally got wind of the fact that the Wagner group was taking prisoners and just throwing them at the front line and getting them killed. I was reading this morning. Actually, this was a story I was gonna put for you guys, and I forgot to put this. The data I saw yesterday on this was that up to 80% of the recruits from the prisons have already been killed. because they're just throwing them at the Ukrainians to be killed, and they don't care. I mean, the Russian military just doesn't care about these guys, so they're just throwing them. 80% of the prisoners have been killed. That message got back to the prisons, and now the prisoners are going, there's no way. So a lot of their recruitment overall has dropped. Still interesting that the Russian Ministry of Defense is doing it, but honestly, if you're a prisoner now, forget it. I mean, you've already, you're the Spinal Tap drummer of Ukraine. You've already heard, mixing metaphor a little there, but you've already heard that they're treating you as literal cannon fodder. So it's not going to help, I don't think. TikTok questions. Is Ukraine running out of soldiers? No, we have not heard that. No. I mean, we had some Ukrainians weigh in the other day just to confirm for us that sort of recruitment has been ongoing. The Ukrainians just 2 days ago, I think, renewed martial law, and they renewed the mobilization. They extended the mobilization and martial law for like another 6 months or something like that. Mobilization meaning like the draft. So they're still constantly thank you, Cass Smith. I'll be here all week. They're still getting more and more men because they need it. I mean, they know the Russians are going to keep trying to bring more men in as well. So nope, not running out. Yeah, proof of life. The map is, you now know the map is alive, not being held hostage. What else we got here? Well, it may not be enough, though. I mean, can all NATO countries just say, if you do take over Ukraine, we will never do any business with Russia or threaten war if they don't back down? I mean, the problem is that's kind of what we're doing right now. I mean, we've sanctioned Russia, and we're basically saying, if you don't pull out and give them their country back, we're not lifting the sanctions. And, the sanctions have had an impact. There's concern that sanctions haven't had enough of an impact, in part because others like the Chinese and the Indians are basically helping keep the Russian economy afloat. Nice allies the Indians are there. I feel like that's kind of what we're doing right now. So if we simply said we're not going to do, and mind you, it's never going to last. I mean, if we let the Russians take over Ukraine, eventually people are going to start doing business with them again anyway. So I just think it's not enough of a threat. Otherwise, let me put it this way. If that threat was sufficient or were sufficient, then the threat itself would have stopped Russia from invading at all, because we told them there were going to be massive sanctions if they invaded, and they invaded anyway, and they're not pulling out as a result. So the proof is in the pudding right there. Thank you, Jetta Mom, for the confetti. What else we got? What else we got here? Slow question day for you guys. Is there any part of Ukrainian territory untouched by the war? That's an interesting question, Matthew. Depends what Richard Fisher, you scary man. It depends what you mean. Okay, first of all, depends how you define territory. What I mean is, do you mean, is there any I forget how many states, there might be 20 Ukrainian provinces or something. Are there any Ukrainian provinces that haven't been touched by the war? I don't think so. The Russians have pretty much made sure to hit everywhere because they're trying to freak people out. They've even hit, in the last several months, actually, they hit down. I remember Ivano-Frankivsk was hit when the Russians were really going after the electrical infrastructure of the last couple months. Vlad is down here, actually. They were hitting all the way over here. We know Lviv. Up here, I don't know how much has been going on in terms of bombing up here. The actual invasion forces, okay? We know Russia invaded and is holding this. We know Russia invaded in 2014 and is holding this. We know that the Russians invaded more or less this, I'd say, except that they had to pull out. Okay. So this is free now, but it was at least touched, to use your phrase. Okay. This, but when you get to all of this, you're mostly talking bombs. You're talking Russian bombs when you're talking all of this. I doubt, down here, have the Russians bombed much? I don't know. But off of the coast here, you do have Snake Island. And Snake Island had a lot of attacks going on, right? So I doubt there's anywhere that has been untouched in that way, even though the fighting I mean, the fighting right now keeps taking place along the front. I mean, the front of the war is more or less like this-ish, okay? And big battle Bakhmut, I mean, the big battle is happening around here, right? So you go. But because they're throwing missiles and everything, they're still trying to sort of keep the Ukrainians freaked out nationwide because it's a psychological battle trying to get the Ukrainians to basically give up, you know? I don't think so. Cosmo's asking, with the growing talk of nuclear threats from Russia, do you think the likelihood of using chemical weapons or dirty bombs is increasing? I mean, I've always said that I think there is a more likely chance of maybe using a chemical or biological weapon than a nuclear, only because nuclear has such a stigma that I wonder if there is an equal sized attack in terms of deadliness, okay, in terms of casualties, done nuclear, biological, or chemical. I think our response to a nuclear attack will be 10 times easily what our response would be to a chemical or biological attack killing the same numbers of people. You could set off a nuclear bomb that kills nobody, and I think we would freak out if they tried that. Had he set off a chemical weapon as a test? I don't know. I mean, the other weapons are horrible, but I think there's just much more of a stigma around nukes that. So having said that, your question was, the nuclear talk does not mean nuclear weapons are more likely to be used. If anything, a lot of the experts think Russia's talking about nuclear weapons because he can't use them, right? It's not in his military interest to use them. There would be way too much of a blowback from the West. We might even enter the war if he used them. So he can't use them, which is why he talks about them, because he talks about them to try to scare us into thinking he's going to use them. So I guess my point is, I don't think the chatter about nukes has caused an increase in the chance of using nukes, and therefore I don't think it's an increase in the chance of using the other weapons either. Really, the other weapons of mass destruction. Beep, 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 beep. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know, Rob. Rob Wall is asking, in the past couple of weeks, we have not heard of many attacks on the electrical grid in Ukraine. Do you think this is a result of the weather, lack of munitions, or something else? I know they're still attacking because just from the bombing reports I see, I just don't tell you guys every day because there's always reports about the electrical. No, because there was something in Odessa recently with power yesterday, I think, some power issues that I didn't tell you because I was like, okay, Odessa's having power problems. I mean, I don't think that's big enough news to, breaking news to share with you guys. It's possible they've got better defenses. Yeah, some of the folks on TikTok are saying better defenses, more anti-missile systems. So it's possible, but I don't know. That's a really good question, though, as to whether there's any real difference happening or whether the news just isn't reporting on the power stuff because, that's what they do, right? They've been blowing up the power forever. Let's see here. Oh, God. Oh, I saw that. Yeah. Tired Guy on YouTube is saying, I heard about this. I actually saw the clip. What are your thoughts about Russian propagandists on state media rewriting World War II history by saying that it was Russia against the entire West? They did this. They claimed on Russian TV the other day, and it's Russian state TV. I mean, it's a dictatorship. This is Putin's message that World War II, wasn't just the Soviets, Russia, right? Even though the Soviets were like a fifth of the Soviets were Ukrainians, but they don't want to talk about that. It wasn't just the Soviets against Nazi Germany. It was the Soviets against all of the West, and they literally said all of the West was siding with Hitler. Now, just so folks know, there were very few people siding with Hitler. One was Italy, right? Two, I guess, depends how you look at it. I mean, I am not a World War II history buff, so I don't know to what degree, Austria, do you blame Austria or do you say Austria was invaded so they didn't have a choice? I will leave that to the scholars, but there's very few European countries that were supporting the Nazis. I mean, mostly, and certainly in the Allies, all of us, it was us. all of us were fighting the Nazis. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, you had people like the Swedes that were playing independent, which wasn't very nice of them. But yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And actually, I was going to say, and as somebody just said on TikTok, the Russians were on Stalin's side. I mean, not Stalin's side. Stalin, the Russian dictator, was on Hitler's side at the beginning of the war. What are you doing? My dog's just hanging out on the balcony. Okay. La la la. All right. Well, I'll leave the door open. It's nice out. The Russians had a pact. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was a secret pact, or maybe not so secret. There was a secret codicil, at least, between the Soviets, the Russians at this point, and the Nazis. And again, over my head in terms of European history, but bottom line is they divvied up Europe. I mean, the Soviets gave the Nazis permission to invade Europe, basically, and said, hey, go for it. We're not going to stop you. Have a good time. And by the way, we're taking Eastern Europe as a result. Right. They shared Poland. I mean, they broke Poland apart. I mean, ridiculous what the Russians did. The Russians were part and parcel with the Nazis at the beginning. And it's only because the Nazis kind of turned on the Russians that the Russians went, oh, okay, I guess. Right. I mean, America didn't get involved because we were isolationist, but we didn't have a secret pact with the Nazis. So anyway, the Russians, but also, as I said, I think it's important to tell the history because I can imagine some younger folks going, I don't know the history. Fair enough. But it's just, literally, it was a massive coalition. Google it and check out the Wikipedia on World War II because they'll show you like who was on each side. It's a massive list of countries in the West that were fighting the Nazis. And the Russians just said, nope, every country in the West was supporting the Nazis. Again, this is what happens when you've got a dictatorship because they can't win. They can't win with the truth. They've got to win with lies. But geez, you wonder too with their people. I mean, their people know the history. I don't know. It's really, they're not like you and me. What else we got here? Yeah, I saw the thing about the Austrian official and the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children. It was a very weird story. I didn't quite understand it, so I didn't put it sort of on the agenda. I'm still trying to figure it. A creepy story, though. We got 5 more minutes here, guys. Let's see. What else we got here? Don't know if anything's going to happen to Putin. I mean, certainly he's getting older. Certainly there seems to be jockeying for who comes next. We are seeing that. But, will they take Putin out? He's a dictator and he's been in power for 20 years because he knows how to keep people in line. So, oh, that's interesting. Okay. How do you think China's relations with Russia will evolve in the near future? Well, I mean, thank you, Hazel. Big question there is going to be, we talk a lot about can the West hang on? Like Russia's planning to do this for years. Can China hang on? I mean, China's big concern is its economy. It always has been, right? China isn't thrilled with the U.S. They see the U.S. as their big competitor, soon to be military and certainly economic. But they certainly want better relations with Europe because the European Union and the economic and the trade and all of that. And the Russia thing kind of shot that all to hell. Russia isn't any big shakes economically to China. I mean, they can get, oil and maybe minerals and stuff, but otherwise Russia's economy is a joke compared to I think I was looking at this the other day and it was something like the European Union economy could be like 12 times the size of Russia's or something. I mean, it's huge. 10 or 12 times, huge, bigger than the Russian economy. They're just not that big. So you look at the recent reports of China where the population growth has actually shrunk. They lost like 800,000 people last year, COVID and general demographic problems of the country. The Chinese economy is no longer growing like it used to grow. So instead of growing 8 to 10% a year or whatever, it's growing 3% a year. And even though 3% a year sounds really good, it's not when you're China, when you're that big and you've got that poor of a country. It's, it's 1.5 billion people. So China worrying about its economy and growth in the future, will it eventually kind of say, you know what? this whole thing with Russia isn't helping us. I mean, granted, they thought they were getting like an offset to America, like it would have been China and Russia versus America. And I think they're still doing that, but I don't know. So I don't, but I think that's what's going to influence what happens next with them, is them trying to figure out what to do with the economy. India, Brave Cobra is saying India will take over China in size of population in a couple of years at the current rate. I thought there was some report in the last day that India was bigger population wise. Didn't I see something in the last day about that? I don't know if anybody knows, but I didn't, because it wasn't relevant for our show here today where we talk about Ukraine, but I thought I saw something saying just that. Yeah. Or some folks on TikTok are saying already is. That's what I saw. Yeah. Either way, both of them are like 1.5 billion ish. China was 1.4 billion and something, but I think, they're very close, whatever. But I thought there was a report. Let me see here. I don't know about that. Rachel's got an interesting question. I don't know, Rachel. Are there many countries who supported Russia at the beginning, having turned their backs and either gone neutral or swung in Ukraine's favor? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think we've seen countries turn against Ukraine necessarily. Has India, India and China seem to be a little more worried. Serbia recently has gotten rather pissy with the Russians, which is kind of interesting because Serbia's very like, oh, Russia, Russia can do no wrong. Right? Because several things in a row, they got pissed at the Russians. Remember the Wagner group was recruiting Serbs, and the Serbs got pissed about that. And then they offered some kind of humanitarian aid, I think, to Ukraine too, which we went, whoa, from Serbia? That was interesting. Bulgaria surprised us though. So Bulgaria went from somewhat neutral to fairly pro-Ukraine, but there was a surprising story about Bulgaria, a week or two ago. Bulgaria, Eastern Europe, former Soviet influence. Bulgaria, wasn't going to get involved in the war, but was going to help repair vehicles or something. I forgot, for Ukraine. Then we found out 2 weeks ago that in the first months of the war, Bulgaria provided something like 1/3 of all the artillery that Ukraine needed or used. So Bulgaria apparently did a ton of stuff secretly that they weren't. Thank you, Betty, for the gift on TikTok, that we didn't know about. So that's interesting. I think in general, has Israel moved a little more helpful? Maybe. Switzerland moving a little more helpful? Maybe. Germany moving more helpful? I think so. Germany actually has been very helpful. Germany just has a way of shooting itself in the foot, but certainly on this tank issue, Germany's now, I think, being way more helpful. So and the U.S., actually, I'd say the U.S. to some degree too. We certainly are being way more helpful on the military front than we started in some ways. So anyway, all right, guys, let me do a quick summary and then of the news we covered, and then call it quits. I don't think I want to do a Discord tonight. I'm tired and I want to eat. We did a good Discord last night, actually, for a while. All right, let me do a quick summary of the news we covered tonight, and then we will call it quits, guys. As I said, make sure, I'll tell you about the nets again at the very end. We have a fundraiser. We're raising money for camouflage nets for Ukraine. You can help us out by going to my linked on TikTok, my link in my profile. Click the link tree. It's the very first item that comes up. Simply tells you how to give via PayPal. Same for you guys, aravosis.com. Or I've got Vlad's PayPal right there. If you write it down correctly, you can just give $20 a net to get nets for camouflage nets for Ukraine. I hope we want to raise $3,000, so please help if you can, guys. All right. So Zelenskyy today was in Paris and London. He's also heading to Brussels. The Brits are talking about maybe giving planes to the Ukrainians, but some of the British defense experts said it's not clear the Brits really have any planes that would help the Ukrainians. It's more the American, French, or Swedish planes that the Ukrainians would probably need. Russia threatened consequences if the UK gives jets to Ukraine, but we don't particularly care what Russia says. Foreign Policy magazine report or journal reports that Ukraine is bracing for a grisly Russian offensive in the eastern Ukraine, possibly in 10 days. So there may be some huge new invasion in 10 days. We will see. The first battalion of Leopard tanks could be sent to Ukraine within the first 3 or 4 months of this year, meaning by March or April, 31 Leopard tanks could arrive in Ukraine. Notorious Russian army captain and mercenary Igor Mangushev, the guy who held up the skull last year, claiming it was one of the Azov battalion guys, was shot in the head and killed in Ukraine, we think possibly by a Russian. Thank you, Betty, for the hearts gifts. I then talked about Dara Masakat's article in Foreign Policy Magazine talking about why Russia lost and lost the invasion, at least did so badly with the initial invasion. And a lot of her analysis, not to go through it all again, comes down to the secrecy that Russia had coming in and their unwillingness to basically bomb the hell out of Ukraine at the very beginning. And they wanted to do a land invasion because they thought it was going to be easy. And guess what? It failed and it wasn't easy. An American investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, who many people find questionable, by the way. Thank you. Who is that? Liv for the, Liv Bjorn, Liv Bjorn's daughter, for the hat and mustache. Thank you. An American investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, who a lot of people don't trust, is claiming that the Americans blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, but a lot of folks think it doesn't really make sense because Biden doesn't have the balls to do something like that. I should say balls, but Biden's way too cautious. Biden's too cautious. There's just no way he would do something like that. And finally, an international prosecution team is saying that there are strong indications Vladimir Putin personally signed off on a decision to allow a Russian missile system into Ukraine that shot down the Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 back in 2014, killing almost 300 people. All right, guys, thank you. And thank you for that last little gift, Bonnie. I'm going to call it quits. I've got some dessert I made earlier that is either very good or very bad. A neighbor sent me a recipe she found, and I was like, I'll try it. I'm not convinced. It's some kind of chocolate cobbler thing that you pour hot water on. It looks good. Let's see if it's any good. But that's beckoning. That's been beckoning me on my stovetop as I've been talking to you all night. So I'll go to the Discord tomorrow instead of tonight. Thanks. I appreciate you, all the gifts, you guys, chocolate strawberries and all. Thank you, moderators, for helping out. As always, we had a lovely group of trolls tonight, as we always do, but that's because we're making a difference and you guys are making a difference. So thank you. And Hazel, thank you for the good night gift. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, US. So Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, and we will talk about the latest news again from Ukraine. So thanks, guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay. All right. Bye. Bye.